Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the provincial election debate for the Peterborough and Kawartha riding. We're hosting it by the Chamber of Commerce for Peterborough and the Kawartha Chamber of Commerce. My name is Gail Morehouse, and I'm honored to serve as the leader for this chamber. Tonight's debate is an important opportunity for our community to hear directly from the candidates about their vision, policies, and plans for addressing the issues that matter most to our businesses, our economy, and of course, our future. With the election day approaching on February the 27th, events like this play a vital role in fostering an informed decision-making amongst voters. I want to emphasize the importance of your participation in this election. In the last provincial election, voter turnout was disappointingly low, meaning that a relatively small percentage of eligible voters determined the future of our province. Every single vote matters. Choices will be made at the ballot box that will impact our healthcare, our economy, education, and the overall quality of our life. I would like to extend my sincere appreciation to the candidates who are joining us tonight and their commitment to the democratic process. I also want to thank Market Hall for hosting this event this evening. Tonight's event is made possible through our partnerships with the organizations such as the Peterborough and the Kawartha Home Builders Association, Central Lakes Association of Realtors, Peterborough and Downtown Business Improvement Area, Peterborough and District Construction Association. A special thanks to Rebecca, the Executive Director of Peterborough and the Kawartha Home Builders Association, for stepping up at the last moment to moderate tonight. Rebecca also serves as a director on the Chamber Board and is the chair of our Advocacy Committee. Finally, thank you to everyone who has submitted questions, and this ensures that your input will reflect the priorities of our community. And now I'd like to begin by welcoming Wendy Goro, who is the CEO of the Central Lakes Association of Realtors, to present our land acknowledgement and to review the details of this evening's presentation. Wendy?
Thank you, Gail. Good evening. I'm Wendy Giroux, the Chief Executive Officer of the Central Lakes Association of Realtors, which is formerly the Peterborough and Kawartha Association of Realtors. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on treaty and traditional territory of the Mississauga Aninashbe. We offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their care for, teachings about our earth and relations. May we honor these teachings. Before we begin the debate, I would like to take a moment to explain how this evening will unfold. As organizers, we have prepared some questions, but we also want to hear from you. To ensure we cover a wide range of business-related topics, we will accept written questions from the audience. If you have a question, raise your hand, and Liam will bring you a cue card and a pen. Once your question is ready, they will collect it from you. We have volunteers tonight who will go through the questions to combine questions together on the same topic to help us keep the conversation going. Here's how the debate will run. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for their opening and closing statements. For responses, our timekeeper, Emerson and Savannah, will ensure the candidates keep answers 1 to 1 minute and 30 seconds, and 30 seconds are allotted for rebuttals. We aim to encourage meaningful discussion between the candidates, but our moderator will cut off rebuttals when it's time to move to the next topic. This debate will feature candidates from parties that currently hold seats in the legislature. However, we are providing 2 minutes for other candidates to introduce themselves. We will now invite the following candidates to the stage. Andrew Rodney from the New Blue Party.
Thank you very much. Everybody can hear me okay? My name is Andrew Rodney. I'm from the New Blue Party. We are legit. We have 108 candidates out of 122 ridings, so we're not a small thing anymore, it would appear. I'm not going to be allowed to debate here, but I'm going to be answering all the questions from the debate on my YouTube channel. I've got a poster that you can come and get from me that's got a link to the channel so you can hear all the answers there. And you can also ask your own questions. I am not afraid of any topic. Unlike the other candidates, I will speak about any issue that you want to talk about. I got into this campaign essentially to tell the truth, and so here goes. In Ontario, your tax rate is 75%. I know you may not think that that's true, or you've never been told that before. The reason that that's the case is due to something called through taxes and hidden business taxes that are in a sticker price of a good or service. Obviously, that's way too high. That means government owns 3/4 of your life, your future, your children's future. They have it and they're not giving it back. That's why when we expect candidates to fix things, they don't do it because they have you exactly where they want you. So it doesn't particularly matter, this is weird for a politician to say, it doesn't particularly matter who we put in Parliament. Nothing's going to change until we start understanding what's going on. Obviously, that tax has to go down. The second thing that, the second truth I want to say is that when people tell you that tax reduction means cuts, it doesn't. From the point where we're at, tax reduction would actually raise government revenue. I've got a YouTube video all about it, so please don't buy that stuff from the media or anyone. A reduction in taxes does not mean a reduction in programs. Unfortunately, I have a very, very short time, so I'll be hanging around the rest of the night. You can come and talk to me. I'm glad to talk about any issue you want to talk about. My name's Andrew Rodney, and I'm running for New Blue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. Is Brian Martindale here from the Ontario Party? Okay. Next up is Vicki Sweeney, the president of the Central Lakes Association of Realtors.
Thank you, Wendy. Good evening, everyone. I'm Vicki Sweeney, president of Central Lakes Association of Realtors. It's now time to begin the debate. So please join me in welcoming the candidates. Jen Deck, the Ontario New Democratic Party. Dave Smith, Progressive Conservative Party. And Lucas Graham, Green Party of Ontario. We would like to note that the Liberal candidate, Adam Hopkins, planned to be here tonight, but currently is dealing with a death in the family. And our moderator for this evening is Rebecca Schillemat, Executive Officer of Peterborough and the Kawarthas Home Builder Association. I'll now hand it over to her.
Right. Hello. Thank you, everyone, for coming out to our candidates meeting this evening and braving the snow. So we're going to give everyone 2 minutes to have their opening remarks, and we're going to start with Jen Deck.
Now, do I need to turn it on? Or
I
will
don't know. No, they turned it on.
Hello, hello, hello. It's on? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, close, close. I think I will do this. Thank you. I believe that you are out there, but I can't see you. I'm Jen Deck, she, her, running for the NDP, and I'm asking for your vote. We face a critical choice about the Ontario we want and the Ontario that we're willing to fight for. 30 years of Liberal and Conservative governments have failed to prepare us so that we can weather the storm we know is coming, and that storm, of course, is called Donald Trump. Ford likes Trump. He was glad Trump was elected, even though Trump famously campaigned for years on increasing tariffs as the solution for everything. Ford doesn't care about local, small, medium, or even large businesses. He's chasing the approval from megacorps, and he is on their side. Last night at the debate, in response to cracking down on big corp greed and manipulation, he complimented them on doing a good job. He is still pushing the long debunked myth of trickle-down economics. The Liberals are still proposing the same kinds of politics as the last time they were in office, but we remember that hallway medicine began under their watch. It's time for a bold approach, and the NDP has a plan. We're ready to tackle the problems you tell us that need fixing, including investments in healthcare and education, getting back into the business of building homes that are affordable, properly resourcing the court system so our jails aren't clogged with pretrial detentions, properly resourcing the landlord and tenant board so that everyone, both landlords and tenants, get a timely hearing. There's so much more to describe in the NDP plan, and I look forward to discussing it tonight, but ultimately, the fundamental question before us is simple. Is the status quo working? Is that what you're feeling and seeing in your day-to-day lives? That's not what I'm seeing. It's time for something better, and it's time you voted NDP. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. All right, Dave Smith.
Thanks, Rebecca. Appreciate that. Tonight we're going to hear things a little bit different. I'll start off with I'm Dave Smith, and I don't sell real estate, I don't sell insurance, I don't sell cars, I can't fix your HVAC system. Those are all the other Dave Smiths who live in our community. I've been the MPP now for 7 years, and I want to continue building on some of the things that we've done because, quite frankly, my job's not done yet. We've got a lot of things, a lot of challenges that we have to deal with. And as we go through the debate tonight, there'll be a lot of questions that we're going to be asked, and in all likelihood, I'm the only one who's going to be giving a local slant to it. What you're going to hear from people on either side of me is the 50,000-foot mark policy that the parties are going to put out. But it'll be difficult for them to talk about it from the local level. When you look at what has happened here in our community over the last number of years, there have been a number of initiatives. COVID aside, COVID created some other challenges for us. But when we look at some of the things that have happened here, when I was first elected, we were short 17 doctors. We're still short 17 doctors. There's no question about that. What we didn't have was a tool to attract doctors to the area. And we didn't have enough doctors in Ontario. So what we did as the provincial government was we increased the number of seats at university to train doctors by 400. Now, that takes 5 to 7 years for a doctor to get trained. We're starting to see the results of it. That first cohort graduated this past June, so help is on the way. Now, interestingly enough, one of the other parties has talked about how they're going to bring doctors to the area, but the reality is they cut the number of doctors by 15, and we'd have 750 doctors more today had they not cut those 50 spots. That's 1.5 million people who would have a family doctor who don't. So when you go to the ballot, I'm asking you to give me the opportunity then to continue the work that I have been doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. All right, Lucas Graham.
All right. Thank you to the organizers for hosting this debate and to everyone here tonight for taking part in this very important conversation about the future of Peterborough-Kawartha. My name is Lucas Graham. I'm your Green Party candidate, and I'm running to be your next MPP because I believe in fairness. A fair housing market, a fair economy, and a fair approach to development that supports both our communities and the businesses that build them. For too long, we've had governments that pick winners and losers, giving handouts to massive developers while making it harder for small and mid-sized builders to get projects approved. We've seen a housing market that rewards speculators while shutting out first-time buyers, and we've seen small businesses struggle with corporate giants get tax breaks. And that's not fairness. That's a system that's rigged, and it's time for a new approach. The Green Party and I believe that a strong Peterborough-Kawartha is built on fairness. That means cutting red tape for the right kinds of development, homes people can actually afford, built in communities where people want to live. And it means working with home builders and realtors to speed up approvals and modernize zoning while cracking down on corporate investors who treat our housing market like a stock exchange. And it also means supporting small businesses and downtown revitalization, not just throwing money at sprawl and hoping for the best. I bring a fresh perspective, but more importantly, I bring a commitment to balance. We can have a thriving housing market without sacrificing affordability. We can support businesses without prioritizing only the biggest players. We can create smart, sustainable growth that works for everyone, not just those with the most money or influence. This election isn't just about what we're against, it's about what we stand for. And if you're ready to vote for a future where our businesses, our developers, and our people thrive together fairly, then let's make it happen. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. So the first question is from the Peterborough District Construction Association. Jen mentioned tariffs, so the question is, given the volatility in trade relations between Canada and the US, how does your party plan to address the challenges posed by potential tariffs on materials which are crucial to the construction industry? What measures will your government implement to mitigate these impacts for industrial, commercial, and institutional projects in our region? And they do affect residential as well. So Jen, you get to go first.
Is it possible for me to actually see the question? That was a pretty long question.
Yes, but it wasn't bad.
Thank you. This one?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Thanks. You know, the hard work of protecting Canada from tariffs is, of course, going to be at the federal level. But that's not to say that there isn't plenty that we can do at the provincial level to shore up our protections. Number one, we need to be actually training people in the trades. There's just been a recent shock to Fleming, which is causing them to shut down programs like the heavy machinery program and other trades programs. So that's number one. We need to invest in our post-secondary so that we can actually grow the kind of workers that we need in the industry. Secondly, we need to protect the people of Ontario from that economic volatility. We need to make sure that they are housed, that they can access food, that they have jobs that they can work hard in and help grow our economy. Currently, we have so many drains on our system based on private health care, the homelessness crisis that is costing us innumerable dollars, although I'm sure they have been counted. So we also need to work with our other provincial governments. We have to work in a collaborative way to make sure that we can start opening up flow of transport between products between the provinces, since currently our United States partner is not a reliable partner. So we need to work on those aspects. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jen. Dave, do you want me to read it again?
No, I'm okay, thanks.
Okay.
One of the things that most people in the area don't realize is that 4.5% of the GDP for the greater Peterborough area is actually in exports to the United States. 25% tariff is going to be devastating for a number of our industries here. And we need to do everything possible to avoid getting those tariffs. That being said, Trump is so unpredictable that we're probably going to be dealing with this the entire 4 years that he's the president. And we need to make sure that we put things in place then to have that resilience. What we saw during COVID was a lot of the manufacturing of many of the PPE items was not done here, and we were at the mercy of other countries. We started to repatriate those jobs. We started to bring a lot of that manufacturing back, and we're going to continue that. We need to make sure that what we're doing has an Ontario focus to it so that Ontario industry has the opportunity to expand and to grow. We will be breaking down the barriers of interprovincial trade. That is something that has been committed on. And we need to make sure that what we put in place for supports for businesses are there to ensure that the working people are the people who are getting the benefit for it. That's why 12 trade unions so far have endorsed our plan and stood behind the Progressive Conservatives and said, this is the party that we think needs to be elected. We're going to continue that work. We're going to make sure that we're doing things to protect the jobs here in Ontario.
Thank you. Lucas, do you want me to read that again? Or-
If you don't mind, yeah, please.
Okay. All right. Given the volatility in trade relations between Canada and the U.S., how does your party plan to address the challenges posed by potential tariffs on materials which are crucial to the construction industry? What measures will your government implement to mitigate these impacts for industrial, commercial, and institutional projects in our region?
Okay, yeah. So I think that the only way to approach this is with a short-term, mid-term, and long-term plan. So in the short term, the Green Party is not afraid to work across party, jurisdictional, and sectoral lines. So we're going to immediately create a tariff task force that works across those lines to negotiate with the United States on trade to try to minimize the impact of these tariffs, or hopefully entirely mitigate them by calming the guy down there down. But that is only in the short term. In the mid and long term, we want to bring more of those manufacturing jobs and more of those raw material imports back into our province. So as the other candidates have said, we're of course going to work with other provinces to finally remove interprovincial trade barriers. But in addition, we're going to provide $2 billion per year for capital spending for municipalities to build resilient infrastructure through a dedicated climate adaptation fund. We're going to create a Protect Ontario fund for businesses disproportionately impacted by tariffs and make the investments needed to build new supply chains, either interprovincially or just in our local economy. And finally, create an investment tax credit to unlock more business investments within Ontario.
Okay, thank you. I don't think anyone needs rebuttal. Are we okay to move on to the next one? We're good. All right. So the DBIA has a question. What will you or your party implement to support Main Street small businesses in navigating rising costs, labor shortages, and competition from large corporations and e-commerce while ensuring that they remain the backbone of our local economies? I'm going to switch it up and make Dave answer first.
Thanks, Rebecca. I appreciate that. A lot of the stuff that we'll continue doing are things that we did implement during COVID. When you look at the Digital Main Street, that initiative alone, we were able to bring a large number of small businesses online so that they could continue selling their wares. That's something that we need to expand upon, so that what we're doing is we're promoting that local small business. It all comes down to how do we create jobs here in Ontario? How do we have that economy going? Because when we look at the economy in Ontario, if we don't have a strong economy, then we don't have a strong healthcare system. We don't have a strong education system. We don't have all of the social safety networks that we need to have. So it all comes down to what do we do in ways to make sure that the economy continues to flourish. We've made the announcement that we'll be moving to an Ontario First procurement process at the provincial government, and that'll cross all industries here in Ontario. So those small businesses here who make that fantastic product, who sell that fantastic product, will have the opportunity to sell it to the government of Ontario as well. We will be embarking on an entire marketing campaign to promote Ontario. Same things that we were doing during COVID. We've already set that game plan on how we should be approaching this, and we're going to continue doing those types of things. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Lucas?
Sure, yeah. So this is a very multifaceted topic, but I think that there's a couple different angles that we can come at it from. First, we're going to strengthen downtown businesses by cutting some of their costs. So lowering business costs, the Green Party will increase the employer health tax exemption to $1.5 million, which will reduce costs for small businesses and make them more competitive. They can reinvest that in staff and growth. We're also we're dedicated to creating more transit and parking and accessibility so that downtowns are easier to access. So expanding public transit and intercity connections in particular, reducing downtown traffic congestion by investing in some road improvements. Just kind of a, sorry. Yeah, and we've also got some grants for small business upgrades. The core of the green perspective on small business is that it makes up more than 90% of all employment in Canada, in Ontario as well. And so we need to support them by, not giving more tax breaks and subsidies to large corporations, but actually creating incentives for entrepreneurship and creating more small businesses.
Thank you. Jen?
Downtown Peterborough is one of the reasons that I stayed in Peterborough after I moved here. It's got an incredible restaurant scene, and the arts and culture is amazing. The shops are great. When I moved in the 1990s, Peterborough had just survived the big boxification of a lot of other cities, and we had a lot to be proud of. But I think if you speak to most downtown business operators today, they will say that the number one issue is homelessness. Homelessness is bad for business. It's bad for people, but it's also bad for business. It hurts the economy. It's pulling at the fabric of our idea of Ontario the good. Doug Ford and the PCs want to police their way out of this problem, but you know that doesn't work. The police know that doesn't work. It's not effective, and it's frankly cruel. The NDP wants to solve the problem of homelessness, and it will cost money. But so is the status quo. The status quo is costing us money, and it is hurting businesses, and it is hurting people, and it is time that we change what we're doing.
Okay.
Rebecca?
Yes.
Since she brought up Doug Ford, I'd like to weigh in on that, because perhaps she missed the announcement in January on the Heart Hub funding for the city of Peterborough, $6.9 million.
When will that be ready?
$6.9 million
When will
has
that be
been
ready?
committed to the city of Peterborough through different organizations, and we're looking at the 1st of April for the beginning of that.
The beginning.
Those
What's
groups
the beginning?
are working together. What we did was have a needs analysis and a gap analysis. What do we have currently in place? What is it that we need to have in place to ensure that we have that full continuum? And that's what we're working on.
Thank you. Does anyone else want? Okay, there's quite a few questions about housing. I think everyone agrees. So everyone agrees that we are in a housing crisis. I hear about it every day. The home builder question is actually, why do you think the construction has slowed down, and how do you propose to correct that? And we're going to go with Lucas first.
Sorry, could you just repeat the question?
Why do you think residential construction has slowed down, and how do you propose to increase construction for housing?
Yeah, so I think this is a two-parter. For the first part, I would say that there's a large degree of red tape. I hear from builders all the time that they want to help, they want to build homes, but they don't have the funding, they don't have the capacity to make it past that red tape. So I think, first of all, we're going to try to remove as much of that red tape as possible, particularly the red tape that is preventing like affordable, proper housing being built. But yeah, none of the red tape that's, protecting real people. The other part of that is, yeah, sorry, I'm just blanking on the question a little bit.
And why do
why
you
the
think we're
slowdown?
in this situation?
Yeah, so the other part of the slowdown is, there's a lot of opportunity for creating sort of missing middle housing. That's duplexes, fourplexes, low-rise apartment buildings. Those are, they're zoned as the same as these large luxury apartment buildings, but because they're small, they're not as competitive. So we have either the options of big sprawling suburbs, or we have large luxury condos, but the types of homes that people want to build are locked away behind zoning laws, so we'll change those.
Thank you. Jen?
Under Doug Ford, Ontario is building the lowest number of homes in 70 years. This is not a new problem. It did not emerge right before the writ was dropped. This has been building for years. The Conservative government knew it was a problem when they took office in 2018. So let's just call that for what it is. But, you know, the other thing is that Doug Ford, he calls himself a great businessman, and yet he is somebody who is breaking contracts that he signed himself. He has made promises, firm, strong, powerful promises on TV saying that he will protect the Greenbelt, and then he reneged on that promise. And then he was bullied into, you know, the public rose up and made him stop again. He proposed bucket beer policies with no regard to basic ingredients and production costs. I mean, we're not surprised that didn't come about. And, you know, you wouldn't stand for this from any business that you deal with, and you shouldn't accept it from your premier. Ford is not a great businessman. He left almost $357 million in federal money because he refused to build fourplexes. This is not rocket science. This can be done, but Ford does not have the priorities to house the people of Ontario.
Thank you. Okay, Dave?
Thanks, Rebecca. So the reality is in 2021, we had a record number of new housing starts. In 2022, we had a larger record of new housing starts. In 2023, we had more than 100,000 new housing starts. That is what the actual record is. We had 3 consecutive years where we had more housing starts than we had seen in over 50 years on it. There has been a slowdown on it. What we saw across Canada and across the world was interest rates went up significantly. And that changed the borrowing ability for people, the ability for them to buy new houses. We also know that it's taking between 8 and 12 years for a site plan to be approved when it's being submitted to any municipality. Those are things that need to be sped up, because what ends up happening is
He's had 7 years to do that, though.
when a piece of property is taking a dozen years to get something built, that adds to the cost of it. Now, we've changed some significant legislation on it. We made it possible to have a secondary suite in any R1 single-family residential. We need to have the municipalities adopt it. The city of Peterborough took 2 years to adopt that. Then we changed it again so that you could have a secondary or a tertiary suite in there. The city of Peterborough took more than a year to adopt that as well. What we need is willing partners who are going to work with us so that we can advance that to make it easier to get these things done.
Thank you. Okay, so this question is from the Chamber of Commerce. It's a bit of a long one as well. There are a growing number of people living on the margins in Peterborough. Many of the supports that are in place are just there to deal with people at the point of crisis, such as shelters, emergency services, police, and hospital emergency rooms. The result is poor health and social outcomes for people and many businesses, the ones literally left cleaning up the mess as people live vulnerably in our public spaces. What is your plan to properly address the roots of this crisis in our community? And Jen, it's your turn to go first.
Can I have a look at that?
Yes.
I'm a visual learner. Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, thanks. Sure, again, not rocket science. This has been happening for years. Healthcare workers have been sounding the alarm that there are not sufficient supports in place for the growing needs for years. Educators have been sounding the alarm since well before the Conservatives came into power that violence is up, that students need more mental health supports. We are growing our future, and we need to be taking care of it. But what have decades of cuts from the Liberals and Conservatives resulted in today? 5 million people in Ontario without a doc, 250 million waiting for surgery, 50,000 waiting for a space in a long-term care facility. Wait times in ERs are averaging 20 hours now. ERs are closing, sometimes permanently, sometimes in emergencies. 2,000 patients a year are receiving healthcare in unconventional spaces, meaning hallways and break rooms. This, by the way, is the highest ever reported stat according to Trillium. Our courts are overwhelmed. Our police are overwhelmed. Our downtown businesses are overwhelmed. We have been crying out for basic supports for people so that people do not fall through the cracks and either become homeless or resort to violence or resort to crime. This is not rocket science. The kids are not all right. We need to be investing in our kids and our workers. And my time is up. Thank you very much.
All right, Dave?
Thanks, Rebecca. Anyone who says to you that they can solve this overnight is either a fool or is lying to you. It can't be solved overnight. We know that it takes between 5 and 7 years to train a doctor. We know that the number of residence positions at the university to train Ontario doctors was cut by 50. We know that we'd have 750 more doctors right now had that not happened. We know that we would have 1.5 million people who have a family doctor who do not at the moment had that not been done. In our very first budget, we added 50 spots into to universities. We're now up to 402. We've added an additional 300 for nurse practitioners. All of those things, though, take between 4 and 7 years, depending on the program that someone is on. Help is on the way. It just takes some time to get those physicians, those nurses, those nurse practitioners all trained. When we look at what's happened locally, I provided funding for CMHA, for mobile mental health and addiction buses. That's not something that's going to solve a problem overnight. It is ongoing. Those buses are going out, Peterborough County, Northumberland County, Haliburton, to help people who have challenges with mental health and with addictions before it gets to crisis. Redpath has been funded now on an annual basis. 300 individuals who are suffering from an addictions challenge will be able to go through that program. We have a detox and rehab center, the first of its kind, in Peterborough that will open at the end of March. These are all things that we're building upon. So the situation will be getting better for us.
Thank you. Lucas?
Could I have the question just one more time?
Yep. There are a growing number of people living in the margins, on the margins in Peterborough. Many of the supports that are in place are just there to deal with people at the point of crisis, such as shelters, emergency services, police, and hospital emergency rooms. The result is poor health and social outcomes for people and many businesses, the ones literally left cleaning up the mess as people live vulnerably in our public spaces. What is your plan to properly address the roots of this crisis in our community?
Yeah, so I think that the roots are clear. There's still not enough, even if it is coming, there's not enough addiction care, there's not enough mental health care, not enough affordable houses. We would propose immediately deploying, if you're familiar with PATH, they've got those tiny homes. So similar sorts of concepts, but using provincial land that's not being used for anything, giving those out at no cost for a lease to nonprofits that are able to create those houses and get people into them. And those are going to be guaranteed supportive houses. They're going to have people on site who are able to provide addiction and mental health care. Because maybe we can't solve it overnight, but overnight is what is important to people who are outside. You've all walked through the cold on the way in here. Overnight is very important. We need to do our best to address that. And so, again, we need to take an immediate term and then a short term and then a long-term solution. We've also, we're also trying to increase the number of doctors, trying to expand the scope of the care that's being able to be provided by local clinics to include addiction services, even physiotherapy, mental health. So yes, we're also going to say it's on the way, but we have plans to address things immediately.
Thank you. Okay, the Central Lakes Association of Realtors would like to know what you're doing for first-time buyers. So the question is, do you support making it easier for first-time home buyers to get into the market? And what will you do to ensure this happens? Dave, can you go first?
Thanks, Rebecca. I appreciate that. One of the things that we have to address is the affordability side of it. We know that it is too expensive at the moment for the average young person to get into a home. We know, I'll talk a little bit about myself. The first home I purchased was back in the 90s. I paid $74,000 for it. I was making about $6 an hour at the time, but I only needed a 5% down payment on it, so that was less than $4,000. Now, we're looking at homes where the entry level is closer to $350,000. You're going to need $20,000 as a down payment to get into that. And when you look at the interest rates that are out there at the moment, it becomes very unaffordable for somebody to get into that first home. So what we have to be doing is finding ways to make them more affordable. And that's why we had the Housing Task Force that was developed by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. We put a call out for proposals on how we can build some of these homes at a reduced price. And interestingly enough, we have a local company called Coremore that will 3D print the frame of the home. This is a company that has put forward their proposal on it. It is something that has been accepted by the provincial government. They believe that they can reduce the price of framing of a house by about 30%. If we can find ways to get that type of innovation moving forward, we'll have ways then of reducing the overall price for entry-level homes, second homes, and retirement homes.
Thank you. Lucas?
Yeah, sure. So I think that we've identified a lot of the problems already. Lack of affordability, too much red tape in the way of first-time home buyers. So right off the bat, one of the things that we're proposing is to end the land transfer tax for first-time home buyers to make it more affordable for people to purchase their first home. We're going to require municipalities to permit developments with the use of pre-approved building designs, so starter home designs to allow for more affordable development. Going to increase housing supply and help new homeowners pay down their mortgage by offering zero-interest loans of $25,000 for homeowners to, if they want to add affordable rental units onto their primary residence, like accessory dwelling units. So not only are we getting more people into rentable units, we're also helping first-time home buyers to pay down their mortgage. And lastly, we're going to make homes affordable for home buyers by removing development charges on homes and condos and apartment units built under 2,000 square feet within urban boundaries. And we're also going to implement an affordable community fund to reimburse municipalities for that lost revenue. So to me, that sounds like a win-win for first home buyers and for developers.
Thank you. Jen?
Well, number one, we need more homes. We've known that for decades. We need to build more homes, and the homes that we build can't be on greenbelt land far away from municipal services. They have to be in communities where people want to live. They need to be homes that first-time homebuyers can afford. And frankly, this is not a single issue item. There are so many factors. People are bleeding out all their income into rent. I was out canvassing in the Tallwood buildings a couple of days ago, and people are telling me, people with identical apartments, side by side, identical apartments. One is paying $700 because they've lived there for 15 years. One is paying $2,400, same apartment. Rent control and the elimination of rent control under Dave's boss, Doug Ford, has meant that people simply cannot possibly save enough money to buy a home, even if they exist, and they don't exist. So yeah, we have to tackle affordability writ large before people can start to have the confidence to be able to make first-time home purchases.
All right.
We need
Okay.
more homes. We need more homes.
All right, Dave, did you,
Do I want to do a rebuttal on it?
Yeah.
The only thing I would say on it is when we reduced the development charges, the Greens and the NDP actually voted against that. They said that what we were doing was we're destroying the opportunity for municipalities to have a revenue stream. And I find it rather interesting now that that idea that we had, that we did do, that is now being brought forward by another party as something that they should do. The reality is every time we brought forward something that would be an initiative to reduce costs, All the other parties voted against it. So it's rather ironic that they're coming up with taking the ideas that we've already done and saying it's going to be theirs now.
Okay,
Can I comment on that?
sure.
Because I feel like that was a little bit pointed. Sure. I mean, I don't know the exact details, Dave, and I'm sure, you know, we hear Doug Ford answering and non-answering questions all the time and refers to stuff, and we don't know if it really exists. But, you know, the concept of what you're describing, I've seen this in education. Sometimes decisions get made, and they're based on really good logic and background and data. But the reason that they're made, it's for the wrong reasons. And so the implementation of that idea results in poor outcomes. So I guess I'm just not trusting that the bills that were proposed necessarily were going to address root causes and we're going to create the outcomes that we wanted. So yeah, maybe other parties are not supporting those.
Do you want? Okay, I've got a very local question that from the chamber. So there's been a lot of talk about employment lands in this area, and there's been very little progress. Now that the commercial industry is threatened by disruptions from the US with the tariffs, we need to build and source more items domestically. Yet there are very few opportunities locally for businesses to set up any sizable manufacturing, warehousing, or logistics operations. Municipalities are creatures of the province, so what is your plan to get this sorted out and open up employment lands in Peterborough and the Kawarthas? And it's Lucas's turn.
Yeah, sure. So the employment lands, they need to have access to utilities, roads. All of that requires upkeep and maintenance. And so I guess my question is, we already had that, and we're instead using it for large residential sprawls when we have urban boundaries that we could be building within. We could be intensifying, creating more density, and instead under this government, we've decided to sprawl out and use up all that land, use that room that could have been employment land, could have been bringing in manufacturing opportunities. But instead, we are sprawling outwards. The property taxes of those suburbs and the people that live there, they don't necessarily cover the costs of the utilities and the roads and everything that are spread out because as it gets farther from the downtown core, it becomes more expensive to upkeep. And yeah, it's not a great use of our dollars, right? Like it looks like housing, it seems like housing, but in terms of whether it's the right housing decision, it is not an economically viable one. So I'd say that we ate up a lot of our prime employment land.
Okay, thank you. Jen?
Yeah, we've heard this before, and Dave Smith loves to punch down on municipal governments. I'm sure you've heard it before as well. The 2021 lands need assessment indicated that there was sufficient land. There's 11,000 hectares of land available within the existing boundaries of Peterborough. And that should be sufficient according to that assessment. That should be sufficient for growth well into 2050. But you know, Dave Smith has brought this up a few times before. If he thinks that there needs to be a boundary change, he should do it. He and his government, they have the legislative authority to impose a boundary change. So I guess the question is, if you believe that this is the only solution, even though assessments have said otherwise, then put your money where your mouth is. Either convince the municipalities to do that using your charm and your leadership skills, or impose the boundary change legislatively because you have that power.
Dave?
Thanks, Rebecca. If we had enough land, then we would have landed those two companies that were supply chain for the EV battery process, and we'd have 3,900 more jobs right now in this area that we do not have because we do not have a large enough swath of land to attract any of those companies. They were brought here, they took a look at Peterborough, and they couldn't find a spot that was going to be suitable for them. We were working on a cross-border services agreement with Cab Monaghan for 250 acres or so, right at Airport Road, as well as right beside Sir Sandford Fleming College. There's a section there that was an additional 75 acres, but the deal couldn't be made. The previous MPP, when this was brought up multiple times during his term, said that it had to be a locally developed solution, that the province shouldn't get involved that way. Now he's the mayor. We had a meeting in my office in March of 23, where it was himself as well as 3 councillors and the city CAO, and we walked through how they could make an approach on it. It took 7 months after that before there was actually anything that was done. We brought them together, I brought them together in January of last year for this proposal, and there's been no progress on it. So absolutely, I'm going to have to take a much more active role in this and ensure that we have the first meetings, and I will provide a mediator from the province to ensure that we get what we need in this area so that employment comes, housing comes, and our children don't have to leave to get a job.
Thank you. We got an interesting question from the audience. Jen, you're going to go first, and it is a longer one. Farming makes up an impactful portion of our local economy. We've seen prices rise for operational costs and for farms themselves, which have made it difficult for people to get into the business of farming. Does your party have any plans to help our farmers? And how would you help get people into farming?
Okay. Well, you know, I may start sounding like a broken record because honestly, the things that the NDP is proposing are going to benefit all people, all sectors, all areas. So number one, we need to tackle affordability. Farmers are people too. But we also need to protect our farmland from the encroachment of development. If you know, farmers need land to develop, to work on, and you know, I'm sure that they need to stay away from pollution and from other disturbances, especially if they have livestock or other animals. The government's role in every case should be to make life easier. We can do that by helping with innovation in farm equipment. We can help that in terms of small business loans to make sure farmers can make the upgrades that are necessary. And frankly, if we want people to stay in farming, we have to make sure that farming is a viable industry, and that means protecting Ontario's economy so that farmers can afford to continue producing the food that we need to eat.
Okay, thank you. Dave?
Thanks, Rebecca. It's an interesting problem that has been presented to us on this because we know that most of the individuals who are farming right now continue to farm well into their later years. They love the farm life. They don't want to leave the farm, so they were looking for ways that they could sever a lot off, leave the rest of the farm to children and have a succession plan that way. The Ontario Federation of Agriculture pushed back against it and didn't want to have a severance from any farmland whatsoever for any reason whatsoever. So what we've done is kind of a compromise on it. So we changed the regulations so that it's possible to put a secondary home on the farm now, so that that more senior farmer who's looking to retire, who wants to leave the farm to the kids, but doesn't want to move off of the farm. And I don't blame them. I live out in Duro-Dummer, and I don't want to live on a postage stamp either. It's possible now for them to build that secondary home on it, to remain on the home, to remain active with the farm and leave the farm to the kids and move on that way. We know that the cost of land is very high. We know that the cost of equipment is very high. We know that there is some uncertainty in cash crops and in other commodities. So finding ways then that we can make it so that you can transition from the family farm to the next generation of the family farming is one of those things that we have been working on and will continue to.
Thank you. Lucas?
Yeah, so I'm going to probably rattle off a couple of these. We are, as the Greens, we're the only party that has published a platform, a costed platform for this election, so makes my job a little bit easier. We are going to create an Ontario food belt to permanently protect prime farmland from being lost to non-agricultural uses, such as urban sprawl, highways, and gravel mining. We're going to invest in local food hubs to support local farmers, supply chains, and businesses. Provide tax incentives for local food and beverage manufacturers who decide to purchase their inputs from local farmers, from Ontario farmers, so that we keep that in sort of a circular economy, keep the money within our communities. We're going to support supply management and defend Ontario food and farmers in trade negotiations. Eliminate property tax penalties for farmers with small-scale value-added production facilities on their farms, because right now there are tax penalties for farmers who want to add that extra building to be able to take their product from like an input stage to something else on their farm. So we're going to eliminate that. And lastly, we're going to promote training in specialty programs that focus on sustainable practices and soil health within agricultural schools and extension services, which will provide jobs that will keep farming viable and a good job to get into.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so this is about healthcare. So we're struggling to meet the healthcare needs of our current population, let alone those our businesses hope to attract. How do you propose to create a stable system of healthcare with teams of doctors, nurse practitioners, nurses, pharmacists, and other healthcare professionals? Dave?
Thanks, Rebecca. Let's start with Dr. Jane Philpott. She has been brought on. She was the federal Minister of Health. She's been brought on to take a look at how Ontario's healthcare system is set up. She's going through that process right now, and I'm looking forward to what her final report is actually going to say. In the meantime, we've already made some adjustments to it. We've expanded the scope of practice for pharmacists so that there's things that you can go to your pharmacy for now instead of having to go to a family doctor or to the Emerge for. Something simple as getting a vaccine can be done now. The types of vaccines have expanded with pharmacists. The scope of practice for nurse practitioners has been expanded so that things can be done with nurse practitioners that we weren't able to do previously. We've added positions at universities for doctors and nurse practitioners to be trained. We've added positions in colleges for nurses to be trained as well. Positions at university for nurses to be trained. So all of those things are in the works at the moment. Locally, we've got the Community Health Center, which opened in its first temporary location this past September. That'll be 11,000 people who do not currently have primary care, who will be able to get primary care through the Community Health Center. We're looking at a team environment now with doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners, and other health practitioners. It's not just going to be that one family physician, the old family practice as they once were. It's all about teamwork now.
Thank you. Lucas?
Could I have the question one more time? Sorry.
Yeah. Right, we are struggling to meet the healthcare needs of our current population, let alone those our businesses hope to attract. How do you propose to create a stable system of healthcare with teams of doctors, nurse practitioners, nurses, pharmacists, and other healthcare professionals?
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that there's lots of different facets to the healthcare situation. First of all, we're going to stop starving the beast. We're not going to be cutting costs and cutting funding for healthcare, trying to push towards privatization. We're going to immediately reverse all of the Ford government's pushes towards privatizing healthcare. We are going to really, the base of it is to get more doctors, get more nurse practitioners, get more personal support workers. But we also want to expand the scope of care that they are able to provide. So nurses at community clinics and personal support workers, they are going to be able to do things like mental health and addiction care, physiotherapy. We are going to have those personal support workers working in ERs to take pressure off of the emergency teams so that at high traffic times, so that they are not overwhelmed. And we're also just going to do as much as we can to systematically change the amount of overwhelming pressure on the ERs by, we're going to reduce the amount of paperwork that doctors have to do and just try to spread everything a little bit more using community health clinics and stuff.
Thank you. Jen?
Thanks. There are a variety of ways that we can tackle the issue of lacking in healthcare workers. Number one, there are internationally trained workers in Ontario. They're driving cabs right now. They're delivering pizzas right now. They are held up, their credentialing is held up with red tape that can be addressed. So that's one thing we can do. Let's do that right away. We can also make it easier for everyone to participate in the economy. The AODA was supposed to kick in January 1st. We are now in February. Is everywhere accessible yet? I don't think so. We need to do better for people who have disabilities so that they can actively participate both in work and in daily lives, their regular lives. I want to tell you a story of pharmacare. Medicare was our public healthcare system were first fought for and won by Tommy Douglas, an NDP hero, who was not in power but was working from the sidelines and pressuring that happened. I'm sure it was considered a pipe dream at the time. The NDP has also been fighting to expand pharmacare, and recently Jagmeet Singh was able to force the Liberals to expand pharmacare. It was supposed to give us free diabetes drugs and materials, and as well as contraceptives. Doug Ford's government has failed to sign the deal so that we can have increased access to pharmacare.
Thank you, Jen. Okay, I think we've probably got time for one more question. I just have to pick one. We did talk a lot about housing, and there's more of a supply of housing that's needed. A lot of municipal budgets, I guess this isn't really about housing then. A lot of municipal budgets are stretched because of provincial and federal downloading. How would you help municipalities with escalating costs and limited revenue sources to restore affordability for residents? And I can't remember whose turn it is. We're going to go with Lucas.
Okay, yeah, so it's been kind of a trend with the past 30 years of Liberal and Conservative governments to download things down the line to the municipalities, and frankly, they don't have the resources or the budget to handle everything like that. So one of the major things is the responsibility for housing and for getting people the care that they need if they're unhoused. So that would include addiction services and mental health care, that kind of thing. So those would be immediately re-uploaded to the provincial government so that would free up some of the municipal government's budgets. And then they are going to be able to, do what municipalities are supposed to do. They're going to invest in infrastructure. They're going to invest in making the community brighter, more vibrant place. And right now they're stretched very thin, and they're not able to do that because the provincial government has put a lot of pressure on them financially and in terms of responsibilities. So I guess what I'm going to finish off with is we're going to take charge, take responsibility for the responsibilities that have been put down on the municipalities and re-upload them.
Thank you. Jen?
Yeah, sure. Municipal taxes are increasing by double digits across the province. It's not just an issue here in Peterborough-Kawartha. And that is, again, because of 30 years of Conservative and Liberal governments downloading costly services onto cities. That's roads and highways, transit, ambulance, police, social services, housing, homelessness. Some of those got re-uploaded under the Liberals, but not enough to fix the problem. We also need to let's think about the economy more broadly. Let's talk about debt. Ontario's debt has been increasing since the 90s. Funny, the Conservatives talk a lot about debt and how bad it is when they are not in power, but I haven't heard much talk about it lately. But the reality is, Doug Ford puts on his hat, it says Ontario is not for sale, but we all know that Ontario has been for sale for decades. Chip by chip by chip, public healthcare being privatized, public highways being sold off, public lands like Ontario Place razed to the ground and sold off to, or leased for 99 years to a luxury spa. But the thing is that Doug Ford and the Conservatives are spending a lot of money. They're running record spending at record spending levels, even adjusting for inflation. We need to be asking if the money that is being spent is being well spent, and does it produce the desired outcome? So we need to be thinking really hard about the money that we're spending. Let's make sure that it's actually doing good for our communities. This, again, is not rocket science.
Thank you. Dave?
Thanks, Rebecca. When we were first elected in 2018, we had a pathway to balance. Then COVID hit, and we needed to put a number of protections in place for people so that we could get through the pandemic. That did increase our debt. Absolutely it did. But what interestingly has happened is our credit rating has improved multiple times since we have been in power. Most recently, it was improved by Moody's. We're back up to a AA rating now, which is something that's fantastic because it means that our borrowing cost goes down as a result of it. We're the only province right now that has a pathway to balance on the budget. On it, we'll be having a balanced budget by 2027. So all of those things are because of good fiscal management. We've grown the revenues on the province of Ontario without raising a single tax because we've focused on growing the economy. And when you do that, all of those things make a positive difference. When we look at what's happened here in the city of Peterborough, the city's budget is about about 411 million. About 170 million of that comes from the property taxpayer. The rest of it comes from the federal government, the provincial government, and some of the industries that they actually own. So when we look at what's happened and the amount of money that has flown into the city of Peterborough on this, I think it's very difficult for a city councillor or for anyone else in the city to stand up and say the provincial government has not supported them.
We actually have time for a few more. So I'm going to ask one about post-secondary, and I'm out of order, so I'll ask Dave first this time.
Sure.
Our post-secondary institutions are being pushed to the breaking point financially. For years, they have found creative ways to be more efficient and generate funding, while their provincial funding and tuitions have been frozen. Trent and Fleming are the backbone of building a skilled and competent workforce, and they're a significant force in our local economy. Will you increase funding and support for public post-secondary institutions?
So when we look at what happened when we were first elected in 2018, we did freeze tuition rates because we believed that students had too much of a burden put on them. So we did freeze tuition at that point. But we also simultaneously did increase the funding that went to the post-secondary institutes. When the federal government made changes to the number of international students, we increased the funding by $1.2 billion across the board to all post-secondary institutes because we knew that there were some challenges that they were facing. The first round of cuts on international students was that no school could have more than 25%. Trent wasn't affected by that because Trent only had 23% of their student body as international students. The second round that came out, and this was just released by the federal government on Christmas Eve, December 24th, for a January 1st start. There were further cuts to it. So you saw some changes at Trent in particular. They had to change their budget, but we've given $121 million more to Trent this year in operating to cover some of those adjustments that they have to make. Fleming is in a similar position, but they were running programs that only had 4 and 5 domestic students. So some of the cuts that they made to programs were because they didn't have enough local domestic students to actually keep that program running. we're looking at how can we further support those colleges and universities, because the last round of changes that came from the federal government came on December 24th.
Thank you. Lucas?
Yeah, so the Green Party is definitely in support of providing additional funding above and beyond what is being given to the post-secondary institutions like Trent and Fleming. As the question kind of stated within it, they are the backbone of our economy here, or of our growing economy. They're the next generation that's going to be taking over a lot of the jobs, that's going to be starting ventures into entrepreneurship. And yeah, I think that they should be supported. So full disclosure, that is obviously my generation that I'm talking about. I'm clearly younger than a lot of the other candidates here, but I see that as a boon. I see that as an advantage because I can bring a fresh perspective. And if political experience was all it took to run a successful government, then I don't think that we'd be in the situation we are right now. We've had 30 years of the Liberals and the Conservatives, and it's not looking so good. I don't think that we'd have a lot of the problems that we're talking about here if that was the case. Anyway, I digress. We would make it more attractive for students to stay in Peterborough once they graduate by supporting jobs, and we would take the burden off of their student loans by supporting them throughout.
Thank you. Jen?
My son is a framer, and he went through the Fleming program and loved it. The Fleming program is one of the riches in Peterborough. But the reality is, if you're a 17-year-old and you want to become a heavy machine operator, before now you went to Fleming and you got trained. Now you have to move away from Peterborough to some other community. I think the nearest might be Guelph. Don't quote me on that, but it's far away. You got to move. And guess what? Rent is really expensive no matter where you go. And so then you go to a Fleming you go to the program elsewhere out of town. You're paying really high tuition. And where are you going to find a place to live? Rent's super high. What if you can't even find rent? And you come out with big debts. The reality is that post-secondary institutions, they grow our workers. They are fundamental to a successful Ontario. We need to fund them so that they can run a wide variety of programs, not just money-making programs, but they have to provide the kinds of skills and trades that we need as Ontarians. And we still have to talk about affordability. So yes, of course, we are also looking at increases in student debt loan forgiveness so that our students are not graduating with crippling debt.
Thank you. Okay, probably the last question this time, and Lucas, I'll ask you to go first. So what is one specific issue that you're going to bring to Queen's Park? So we know that this opportunity is your voice to bring Peterborough to Queen's Park. What is an issue you're going to bring to Queen's Park?
So I think that the major one that I'm hearing at the doors is, we've got over 300 people that are permanently homeless right now in Peterborough. So I think that is what we are going to tackle first, and that is the issue that I would bring to Queen's Park. So we've got already a really great nonprofit program called PATH, the Peterborough Action for Tiny Homes. And a big part of what the Green Party is proposing is making more of those types of units and putting them on provincial land that's not being used for anything, and allowing them to build more and to immediately get people off the streets into these supportive houses with wraparound services, including addiction care and mental health care. So, from the perspective of the downtown, I live in the town ward. I want to make sure that people are able to have a warm, safe place to sleep at night, but it also cascades over into every other aspect of the downtown because we've got these tent cities. They are hurting businesses, they're hurting people who are suffering under these poor conditions, and so that's going to be my number one priority when I get to Queen's Park.
Thank you. Jen?
Well, I'm a teacher, so education is always going to be close to my heart, and Chandra Pasma is an excellent education critic, and I look forward to working with her. What I would be bringing to her would be, of course, the incredible and heartbreaking level of violence that is in our classrooms. Kids today are witnessing on a routine daily basis the caring adults in their classrooms being injured by other students. The need for more supports in our education cannot be more clear. It is heartbreaking to watch kids suffer for lack of basic mental health supports and other healthcare supports. And poverty. This is unacceptable. You know, last night at the leaders' debate, Doug Ford was talking about cracking down on youth crime, and he described a 16-year-old doing an armed robbery. And I'm sure, I immediately have an image, and I'm sure you do too, and it's terrifying. Being involved in an armed robbery or crime of any kind, it can be life-altering and it can be life-ending. And so, of course, you know, there's lots of focus on that mean, scary 16-year-old, and I'm scared of that 16-year-old. But you know what? 7 years ago, that 16-year-old was 9, and we were crying out for supports because kids are poor, they are hungry, they need mental health supports, they have witnessed trauma, and they need our help, and we are failing them. That's what I would bring to Queen's Park.
Thank you. Dave?
Employment, 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 employment. If you don't have a strong economy, you don't have the money to do anything else. And what we're seeing in Peterborough is property taxes go up significantly because we don't have an employment base. The commercial and industrial taxpayer, property taxpayer, pays 1.5 times what the residential taxpayer does. We need to make sure that those kids who are graduating from Trent University and Sir Sanford Fleming College don't have to leave our community to have a job. I've got 3 kids. I don't want them to have to go someplace else. I'd love to have them here, but there simply isn't employment opportunities here. We need to find ways to bring those companies back. Peterborough at one time was an industrial city. Peterborough at one time was considered the average city across Canada. Most new products were sampled, tested here first. But we don't have that anymore. We've lost that employment base. We've lost the opportunities. We have kids who are moving away as a result of it. We have people who are paying high property taxes now because we don't have an employment base. Those are things that we have to do. We have to get employment opportunities for people in this community again so that they have hope, so that we have the money to spend on the different things that we need to spend that money on. We don't have that right now. And what I'll be doing is working on finding ways to have more employment opportunities in the greater Peterborough area.
All right. I would like to thank everyone for their time. You do get a few minutes to have closing statements. I'll just go in the same order. So Jen, you get some time.
Thanks again. Thanks to everyone out there in the mysterious, darkened crowd. Thank you to anyone who's watching. Look, we're looking down the barrel of 4 long years of Donald Trump and the damaging impacts it's going to have on Ontario. We cannot afford to elect a leader who admires and models himself on Donald Trump. Ford wanted Trump to win, even though we've all heard for years Trump's plan to solve everything with tariffs. Either Ford didn't see this coming or he doesn't care. Either way, we can't put him back in charge. The Liberals talk a good talk, but their policies are conservative light. We all remember what it was like heading into the 2018 election. Ontario was ready for a change. Aren't we all feeling ready for a change now? In 2016, the wait time for social housing was 4 years, and now it is 10. There are no new ideas coming from the Conservatives or the Liberals. They want to maintain the status quo, but the status quo isn't working. The NDP is ready with a bold vision for Ontario, one that will address the crises we're in and future-proof us from the next threat from Trump. The NDP understands that when we invest in the people of Ontario, we are investing in our future. It's time for something better. It's time for a change. It is time for the NDP. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dave?
Thanks, Rebecca. When we take a look at what we have done since we have been first elected, we've tried to address the healthcare problem. We increased the number of doctor positions at universities so that we could train more. We've made it easier for internationally trained doctors to get their licenses here in Ontario. And we're the only province right now that has said, if you're licensed anywhere in Canada, you can practice in Ontario. So we're addressing that shortage. The challenge that we have with it is it takes 5 to 7 years to train a doctor. That should have been done 15 years ago. It's not something that should have been done or started 6 or 7 years ago. It should have been started 15 years ago. We've increased the number of spots at university and colleges for nurses. We've increased the number of spots at university for nurse practitioners. We're on our way on those things. Help is coming because people are graduating. We're addressing the homelessness issues. We're addressing addictions issues locally. We have the funding for the Heart Hub, $6.9 million on an annual basis to fill in all those gaps because we want to make sure that we've got the supports in place for somebody who is anywhere on the spectrum, whether they are homeless, whether they are living in their own home and they have an addictions problem. We're going to have that pathway for everyone so that they can get to a better spot. We'll meet you where you are, but we're not going to leave you there. And that's the approach that needs to be taken. And when we look at the economy is something that everything else revolves around. We need to make sure that we have a strong economy. We need to make sure that we have a leader who's willing to stand up to Donald Trump. And we're seeing that right now with Premier Ford. He's been referred to as Captain Canada because he is the chair right now of the Council of Federations. All of the provinces have gotten together. There's a void at the federal government on this. Premier Ford has stepped up. He is showing that we are pushing back against Donald Trump, and he's got the backs of the Ontario workers.
Thank you. All right, Lucas?
Tonight, we've talked about a lot of the challenges facing Peterborough-Kawartha, housing, affordability, the future of our businesses, and how we grow as a community. But this election isn't just about the problems, it's about the choice that we have to make. For too long, Doug Ford's Conservatives and the Liberals before them have put corporate profits ahead of real people. We've seen it in the housing market where giant investors drive up prices while families are priced out. We've seen it in infrastructure spending where highways and magic tunnels are prioritized over local roads and transit. And we've seen it in small business policies that offer handouts to corporate chains while independent businesses struggle. We can't afford another 4 years of this broken system, and we can't afford to keep voting the same way and expecting a different result. Some are going to tell you that you should vote strategically, but let's be honest, if strategic voting worked, we wouldn't be in this mess. The only thing the lesser of two evils approach has given us is rising costs, a worsening housing crisis, and politicians who serve donors over people. It's time to vote based on your values and not your fears. The Green Party has real, practical, and costed solutions to build homes people can afford, revitalize our downtown areas, support businesses and developers who play fair, and invest in infrastructure that benefits everyone, not just the highest bidder. And while other parties make big promises, we've done the work. We're the only party to release a fully costed platform so voters know exactly how we'll pay for our commitments without hidden cuts or vague numbers. This election, I ask you to vote for what you truly believe in, not out of fear, not for the same old broken promises, but because you know that we as a community can do better. Together, we can build a strong, fair, and thriving Peterborough-Kawartha. Let's make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome Gail Morehouse back for closing remarks.
Thank you for everyone for joining us tonight, whether you're watching in person or from home. It's been really engaging and very insightful conversation. Thank you, Jen, David, Lucas, and Andrew. We appreciate everybody contributing. This is a collaborative debate that has happened with the partnership through the DBIA, Downtown Business Improvement Area, the Peterborough and the Kawartha Home Builders Association, Central Lakes Association of Realtors, and Peterborough and District Construction Association. We encourage you to share what you've heard tonight in the debate. It will be available on your TV and online. You'll see clips of it happening on all of our social platforms. If you'd like an opportunity to engage more one-on-one with the candidates, there's a more informal opportunity happening on Thursday morning in Lakefield at Marsh Center from 9 until 10. Everyone is welcome to come and have conversations more thoroughly with them. And finally, your vote matters. So please make your voice heard on February the 27th. Show up. Show up for you, show up for your family, show up for your friends, and really direct where you want our province to go. Together, we can shape a future, and it's the future of our province. Thank you again, and have a really great evening.
Hello,